getting good at this stuff will not only make you tough to play against, will give you tons of different opportunities to potentially exploit, become tough to play against, basically run people over. Today, we are going to look at check raising from the big blind. In my experience, super high roller players or high stakes players in general are really good at executing the strategy. And in contrast, I do think less experienced players, they can struggle. Maybe they know how to be aggressive on the flop, but turns and rivers can be really, really hard to navigate. I also think having this aggressive check raise out of the big blind is efficient because in position, in theory, is supposed to fight back really hard via maybe back raising or lots of calling. Basically, very little folding. We are going to look at GTO lab first, look at one example, look at a few flop reports, get an idea, and then we're going to drill versus lucid GTO and hopefully find some difficult nodes and just talk it through. So let's get into it. We're going to see cutoff raise first in. Okay, we see a 34% opening range, offsuit 9x, mixing folds, a lot of offsuit ace-x. Big blind is going to rip all the pocket pairs pre, induce the best ones, offsuit ace-x rip, induce ace-x suited plus pre. What really stands out to me though is so much calling, almost 70%, very little folding. That usually means that we naturally miss a ton of boards as we defend. What's going to happen then? The cutoff's going to counter by lots of small betting in position on many, many textures, rarely checking back. It's really hard to play from the big blind because, again, cutoff has that range versus range asymmetry. They leverage that, and we have to play defense. So the check raise is really important to get good at. So let's pretend we do defend. You get a jack 5-4 rainbow check. Okay, this board does check back 18% of the time, but a whole bunch of small betting. You will see the bigger sizes sneak in there, but I think population stylistically likes playing the small flop size. And it makes a lot of sense because big blind, when we're talking about the population, does under check raise, does probably overfold. So the small bet is really efficient for that, but you want to be that person who's really hard to play against. And you're going to make the cutoff be like, oh, damn, I can't just always fling out a small bet because I'm going to get check raised. So what do? Do I check back sometimes? Do I play this big size with this uncomfortable combo? So getting good at this stuff will give you a benefit. So we're going to pretend that there's a B20. Unsurprisingly, as the big blind, we are going to be check raising a lot. We see 26.5% goes for this R50 size. When we are shallower, our top pairs are often fast playing. Again, value thresholds to potentially get on all the money. Widen the shallower we get, we're less concerned about protecting our range. We are more concerned about just forcing money in, especially versus this wide C bet, and check raise our value before our hand is potentially devalued. So if we're check raising our jack X so aggressively, what does that mean? Well, we have to sprinkle in bluffs, some linear type of hands as well, like 6-5 plus backdoor seems pretty good at generating folds. Can take a bunch of heat if cutoff plays back, sprinkling bluffs. Most of them are intuitive, right? 1 over plus backdoor plus multi-draw backdoor. There's going to be a variety of combos sprinkled in, all stuff that we'll get into once we go post. But one thing to think about, if you check raise your jack X as aggressively as this, okay, it's really aggressive. If you take the passive route and just call with different parts of your range, in many scenarios, you're going to have to start defending that later down the tree as well, right? On the turn, on the river, you might be in uncomfortable spots. And in my experience, population does overfold these hands, not really understanding where they're at in their range. Since you check raise the flop so aggressively with a jack, you just don't have a jack later down the tree, right? So you do have to start dipping into more uncomfortable combos. So that's always something to have in the back of your mind. So quickly taking a look at flop reports. Okay, let's get an eagle's eye view looking at these flop reports. How do we react versus B20 over varying different flops? When we look at all flops, we can see that we're folding 39%, calling 38, but we do check raise a lot at this depth versus that size. This R25 size, the smaller check raise, almost 8% across all boards. Pretty useful on pair boards or mono boards where our value is really locked up. We want to create the strategy of check raising for value and protection, attacking hands from the in-position player that have little to no equity. And then this R50 size, almost 15% check raise. That's more on the dynamic boards where we're a little more polar to check raise, like say like a 9-8-3 flush draw, we're facing the small size. Our 9x might want to go for the bigger check raise size, a little more polar, wanting to protect, force money in. This R284, that's a jam that creeps in there as well, but roughly 23% check raise. That's unsurprising. At this depth, we are ready to get the money in quite wide. If we hover over R25, we can see lots of aggressive check raising. on these pair boards. We do have disadvantage on these like middling low pair boards. We want to play it really aggressively. We do mostly continue via the check raise. So you can see here, this is the call column. Here's the check raise. More check raising than calling. And I don't think population generally plays this way because it is really, really hard to execute. And that's the whole point of doing this video, trying to get better at it. So if you think of a board like Jack, Jack 4 flush draw, that's a board where in position we'll bet the entirety of the range for the small size. So yes, we want to check raise our Jack, but also our 4x value protection, just targeting the auto C bet. Yes, it can be dicey playing turns and rivers, but again, hopefully that's what we're going to get into when we start drilling. I can't predict what's going to come out on turns and rivers, but I'm sure we will find spots. What about our bluffs? Well, not really a bluff, but something like a flush draw, that makes sense. But then there's going to be a lot of different combos sprinkling. And because again, we're not really calling, we are just check raising. So clear intuitive ones, queen of clubs, 10 makes sense. King of clubs, 9. Backdoor diamonds that need to continue in some way, shape, or form will be aggressive. But then we start digging into these pretty unintuitive, dusty combos. King of clubs, 2 of hearts type of hand. They're kind of designed to give us bluffs later on down the tree, do a good job of generating folds. It has the blocker unblocker thing going for it. But these are the type of textures that are really, really, really aggressive. Let's open up Lucid GTO, get ourselves in some spots, because for me, that is the best way I learn, and I hope you can learn something as well. Opening up Lucid GTO, let's do a custom drill. So we're going to click drills, play custom drills, MTT chip EV. We're going to do 25 BB, post flop, cutoff RFIing for the min raise. The big blind is going to defend. We are going to play from the perspective of the big blind. We're going to force check from the big blind, so no leads. We're going to force quarter pot for the imposition player. I do think training versus the small size is efficient because population mostly picks the small size. We're going to just focus on a quarter pot in this particular video. We are just trying to learn mechanics, heuristics, thresholds, etc. We're not going to force a check raise because I want to start on the flop. I think it's important to break on the flop first before we potentially get to turns and rivers. So let's drill some hands. I will always say, and I'm probably really repetitive, but for me, my philosophy is understand the equilibrium, get good at it. And when you know the equilibrium well, that's where you can become really strong at deviating and searching for exploits. Like in this particular spot, we're going to see that in theory, the imposition player, once they get check raised, if we go B25, R25 from the big blind, they're supposed to continue an insane amount, roughly 80%. And now you're playing in your games where, hey, you know, your opponents are just overfolding an insane amount. Well, dial up your check raise. That's why getting good at this stuff, in my opinion, will not only make you tough to play against, but will just give you tons of different opportunities to potentially exploit, become tough to play against, basically run people over. So let's get drilling. Right away, we have a very intuitive one to be aggressive with. Imposition will not out-bet their full range. They will have quite a bit of checkbacks, roughly a quarter of the range, I would imagine. So our range as the out-of-position player on this texture does have calls. We don't just check raise everything, but we mostly check raise. So the way we continue this is mostly by check raising. Our particular hand, though, wants to be pure, I would imagine, especially on high seed. So, of course, our 5x, but also our 4x wants to check raise for value and protection, flush draws, backdoor diamonds, and then we kind of dip into this hand class of, I like to call it like this unexciting hand that usually does something aggressive. So, yes, it's dusty. Yes, it gives us potential bluffs later down the tree, but it does an efficient job of generating folds, right? The queen of clubs is really efficient for blocking continues. It will fold out dominating queen X, like just queen 9 offsuit. That's a bonus. The 6 does a nice job wrapping around the 5 and the 4. So with all that said, we are going to pure check raise this for this R25 size, and it is more or less pure. And unsurprisingly, the imposition player calls. Like we were just saying, the imposition player is supposed to fight back really hard, either by back raising or calling. They are not supposed to fold much. So if you are in your games and you notice that the imposition player is not fighting back enough via calling, like ramp up your check raise with your range, right? But if they do continue, maybe slow it down a little because their range will be tighter, but potentially they also fast play things on the flop versus the checkers they're not supposed to. So there could be some things canceling each other out. The ace is a card where we're generally going to be passive on. That's obvious. If it was like the ace of hearts, there would be a lot of checking with our range. Obviously, the club filling in, we do turn a bunch of flushes. Our 5x is still interested in betting. We have a very intuitive one to continue being aggressive with. On a 71, I'm actually going to go pure. Half pot is going to set up a geometric sequence. It's going to set up half pot on the river. Okay, looks good. We are facing a quarter pot. We have a high seat, 97. So this is one of those hands that's really comfortable to just call. We are going to check raise on such a high seed. We're going to use this R25 size. Usually on the mono boards, we want these small check raise size. It's very efficient for just targeting that range that just auto bets and that has little to no equity. And something like this can get a little bit of protection, small little bit of value, but we do want to check raise this on a 97, I believe. We won't be check raising this board all that much, maybe 15% of the time. But on such a high seat, I'm going to go for R27. And it looks like it does creep in there, but you do need to roll a smidge higher. So this is where it can get complicated. We have B157 left. You're kind of in this middle part of your range and you just check raise and you're just like, is my hand now face up? If I just check, this is awkward because I think what's most comfortable is someone population generally check raises some equity and then will want to barrel. We just check our hand now. When we do have some super strong hand that check raises maybe like a flush at some frequency, maybe we put in a slow play. It's still easy to get all the money in by the river. And that's one thing to have in the back of your mind is we are still kind of protected. We will still have slow plays and those slow plays don't suffer so much because the stack to pot ratio is relatively small. We're just at a part of a range that now that is too weak and wants to fold, but it does mix calls. I actually thought that was going to be, so I'm going to learn a lot in this video because this is uncomfortable for me too. Rolling a 95, we are going to hit in position with the bigger check raise. Both sizes will mix. I believe we are going to do a lot of linear check raising, but yeah, we do want to check raise to R67. Looks like it creeps in there, but a lot of R25. King turning, passive seed. Comfortable thing to do is to barrel. King is bad though. A lot of our queen X now wants to check, thinking how much blocking we get to do. I'm going to check on a 20 though. Now we're stuck on the river with 8 high. I think lower cards would be more slam dunk, even though these are middling, like 4-3 would be really nice. Some 6-3. The 8 is slightly problematic, but okay. I don't think you can pure bluff this on a 19. I'm checking and giving up, and it is actually a pure check. Facing a jam, now we're done. Okay, king 8-2 rainbow. This is a board where in position is dark bet with range. They're just auto betting for a quarter with absolutely everything. So we have to build a counter as the big blind. We're going to be check raising a lot, right? On these dry boards, since they're kind of countering our wide pre-flop defend, missing boards, they're playing a quarter. Now we aggressively check raise. So we still have calls in this texture, but we continue more by check raising at equilibrium. So 30% plus, this will definitely make the cut. If we always take the passive route, again, I'm going to keep saying the same thing. It's going to be harder to realize equity later down the tree. We don't mind getting in complicated nodes. You know, when you become really good, it's good to get in complicated nodes. You're going to put your opponents in a bunch of difficult spots. You want to be that person that's really hard to play against. So on a 91, yes, I'm check raising. We have a bunch of hands wrapping around the 8, like backdoors. Those are obvious, like a jack 10 offsuit is going to be really aggressive to check raise. Unsurprisingly, we see cutoff call. They're probably going to fold roughly 20% of the range versus that check raise size. So they're continuing very, very wide. On a 67, it's a high enough seed that we're going to go for this B52 size. We're betting a geometric sequence, but no, it's an EV error. What the solver, I think, trying to tell me is, really, are we just blocking B10? Yeah, I guess we have a lot of 8x. It's a relative brick. Cutoff is going to call, like I said, really wide on the flop. So they're going to have a bunch of ace high, a bunch of backdoors. We can still leverage that by not being overly polar, and we can have block sizes. So in this particular sim, there's B10. So a lot of our 8x will still want to play this B10 size. This is going to be used a lot. When we have 8x, we still want to get value protection. And when we still bet B10, they are still continuing relatively wide. I think we go for a jam. Yeah, it's pure. Okay, hope there were a few interesting spots in there. My advice to you is train versus the bot, put yourself in difficult nodes, get good at this stuff, because when you're sitting there in game, you're going to feel confident. You're going to be like, I've seen this spot. I've been in this difficult node. I feel comfortable now check raising aggressively because I'm going to get to the turn. I'm going to have an idea of what my strategy looks like. I'm going to get to the river. Like, it's going to be okay. Because I've been there where I'm afraid to get in a difficult node. And this is how we get better, by making errors, not playing too safe, and taking our game to the next level.